felon continues to look worse and worse in public, and Wall Street turns on him? Let's look into that. Welcome to Scrying Out Loud. My name is Trevor. First off, a huge thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel. Thank you for liking, watching, commenting on the videos, hyping the videos, watching the videos all the way to the end. This is really what helps the YouTube algorithm send the videos to more people. So for that, thank you, thank you, thank you. I am doing my fall 2025 tarot reading class on Patreon. If you're interested in that, the link will be uh, below. I'm going to close that class at the end of the month, so you won't be able to join after the end of the month. Okay, so Wall Street turns on the felon. So the felon announces this crazy idea of, we're going to charge $100,000 for H-1B visas. I think currently they're quite expensive now, maybe like $3,000 to $5,000 depending upon what the company is. Companies immediately freak out. They tell their employees, don't travel overseas. If you are overseas, come back. Um, of course, there's going to be lawsuits about this, but is this kind of the last straw with Wall Street and the felon? We'll look at that. It was reported that grocery prices are now are increasing in price at the highest rate in 3 years, which is something I've been talking about for a while, but nobody seemed to be reporting on. So does this cause voters to flock to the Democrats in the midterms? We'll look at that. Farmers are even more mad at the felon, and part of this has to do with the H-1B visas, which the connection here is a little bit tricky. But the H-1B visas were designed to attack India. India is about the one country left that actually imports grains from the U.S., even though it doesn't need to. It just does it out of kind of courtesy. So I think that's going to go away. And this will cause more chaos in the commodity markets in the U.S. Republicans, they lose votes for embracing Charlie Kirk. So if you're just curious about that, that's the way I see that going down. Um, and the felon, keeps having public displays of insanity and just looking horrible. So let's take these one by one. Let's start with Wall Street and what do we need to know about Wall Street turning on the felon? Um, just feel like they're not getting what they signed up for. I'm not sure. I'm recording this on Sunday late in the afternoon. Um, so the stock futures haven't opened yet, but I'm imagining companies like Cognizant and Emphasis and Entity, these contracting companies that employ a lot of people from India because they're Indian based, but they work in the US under H-1B visas. I imagine those will be sharply down. Um, and I think this is just another insider trading thing. I don't think this will actually stick, but I think Wall Street's kind of sick of the threats. Um, so, excuse me. So let's take a look at this. What do we need to know about Wall Street? And are they turning on the felon? Yeah, I see the Five of Pentacles in the water. It's pretty common these days. It's financial loss. They do realize he's ill. I think they also realize this is probably going to go through, but I think they're sick of the chaos. Attacking the Fed, all of these things really do introduce chaos into the markets, and there's really no need for it. The markets have sustained quite well. I'm not sure if they continue to. I think people think this is just consistent type of actions from him with the Queen of Swords. Again, don't take financial advice from me. It's just a tarot reading. Everything I say could be right, it could be wrong. The Knight of Swords, I think we'll see quick action here. I think I think we will see moves to condemn this because it's not like there are U.S. workers ready to replace the people that are on H-1B visas. There aren't. And excuse me. And they were talking about changing the rules too for the Einstein visas as well. And there aren't Americans ready to replace these people. Universities, which I think this is also an attack on universities, uh, you can't just train somebody to have a PhD in 6 months to replace a chemist that's on an H-1B visa. You just can't, and universities can't afford $100,000 for an H-1B visa. So um, we do get circles of support and celebration in the environment around. I think he thinks this is a good idea. I think some of the people around him think it's a good idea. I don't think anybody else does, including Congress. We get Russia at the center of the reading. They certainly benefit from this because by pissing off India, India is going to have no problem to continue propping up Russia by buying their oil. Kind of makes sense that they're at the center of the reading. With the Seven of Cups, it's illusion and delusion. One, to think that this is enforceable because it's just not. It's not. I don't think it's going to happen. I certainly don't think so. There are guardrails in place to stop it. And, we get victory in the environment around and fiery messages coming out. So Wall Street knows that um, the felon's quite sick. They see Russia as the big winner here. And I think we'll hear some voices out about that. I wouldn't be surprised if we even hear the Russian connection mentioned. So pay attention to that. There are guardrails in place that keeps him from doing these things really quickly. So um, he can say all he wants, but it's not going to happen that quickly. It's just kind of consistent with his behavior. I'm sure the MAGA base loves it, but they're delusional to think that this in any way helps the United States because it does not. There's absolutely zero benefits here. There are no workers to replace the H-1B visas. There just aren't. And we get victory, and I think the victory is for the for Wall Street or the sense of this getting undone. It's just a shaky situation. And again, we get the Ace of Wands. It's like new leadership. They're just waiting for Vance to become president. I don't think he'll be as a good president, like I've always said. I don't see that, but I do think that he's more consistent, and that in of itself is quite um, worth a lot. Like, the predictability of it is worth a lot to the market and to Wall Street and to perhaps even our sanity. Things can be horrible. At least we know if they're not going to change on a, every 30 minutes there's a new story. I think that would benefit everybody. But he's, of course, not going to be a good president. Okay, so grocery prices are going up faster than they have since COVID or just after COVID. But I don't know how you define that, but since 2022. Um, does this make voters flock to the Democrats? Yeah. See the Ace of Swords and the Scrying Bowl. I think people know the truth. You know, I think if he hadn't done any tariffs and inflation had just kind of stayed steady, people might have blamed Democrats for it. Just like people blamed George W. Bush in the 2012 election when Obama won re-election. So when unemployment was still high, they still blamed Bush. But since these tariffs, here's the Ace of Swords I was seeing. People know the truth. They they know exactly why grocery prices are higher. Um, we get the Queen of Cups. There's a lot of empathy in this country, and it's coming back. It kind of does seem when you see your neighbors suffering that there's more empathy. And now that it's MAGA that's seen MAGA suffer, because they tend to be lower on the economic spectrum. Not that there aren't others, because there's certainly the vast, I mean, the majority of us are low on the economic spectrum. But um, I think that really changes things. I just do. The hermit card. People really thinking this through, getting a different perspective on it, trying to understand why exactly it is that he's doing these things and why Republicans aren't stopping it. It doesn't matter once the felon's gone. Republicans will be blamed because Republicans could have stopped it and they didn't. And somebody, I haven't been very good about getting to the comments because there's just been so many, but thank you for all your comments. There was a comment that asked, what did I mean by all the tariff money's been spent already? What was spent with the tax cut? That revenue source was part of what they argued was funding the big tax cut. So that's what I meant by that. The companies pay the tariffs to the government. They raise the prices, so we pay the companies back for the money that they gave the government. That's how it works for tariffs. So, um, yeah, the Ace of Wands again. I think people just are ready. They're ready for him to be gone. The Eight of Swords. People feel trapped, helpless. There's really nothing we can do. And grocery prices are the most scary thing to see go up, right? Because we obviously can't live without food. So, and it's harder and harder to like cut grocery budgets. It's much easier to cut an entertainment budget, right? Or going out to eat budget. But like grocery prices, it's pretty tricky to cut those budgets. I think a lot of people are already down to just the bare necessities, and the bare necessities are what are expensive. So, not to mention, I mean, a bag of potato chips is like $5. It's so if you want like party stuff, it's even crazier expensive. We do get the Sun card, full illumination. People really do understand the truth. They understand what's going on here. Um, we get the Queen of Swords. He did exactly what he said he was gonna do when he was campaigning. And we get the Queen of Pentacles, financial security. It's three queens, by the way. Just reminds me of, this. We talked about the feminine energy coming in when he goes. I think that's true too, but I think also in a lot of households that, married households in particular, and single households with women at the front, they're the ones making the grocery decisions, right? That's generally just how it works. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's generally how it works. So I think that has a lot to do with it. Why we have three queens here, I mean. And we get the Five of Cups, which is about loss. So people know the truth. People feel trapped. The Republicans are the ones that lose. Um, People think that the Republican plan was executed exactly how they wanted to. They don't like it now that it's executed, and so they're changing their minds about it. And this is why they lose voters. Again, I think it's threatening financial security. People are empathizing with people that maybe aren't as well off as they are, even if they're not well off themselves. People are ready for new leadership, and people are definitely ready for, um, you know, full illumination of exactly why these things were done because they don't really make a lot of sense. Nobody won here. Well, that's not true. Somebody won, but we sure didn't. The country didn't. So who won? Underneath, we get unlikely partners and we get judgment. So I think you'll see Republicans voting for Democrats just as a form of judgment to say, hey, this you can't be trusted anymore. I do worry that I don't worry a lot, but it is possible in the 2025 elections that the Democrats and the states that have been controlled by Democrats, particularly like New Jersey, Democrats might get blamed for this, but I don't think so. I think people are smart enough to put that to the side. So farmers getting even more mad. Um, this is just, it's getting really out of control. Um, there's no place to sell soybeans. There's no place really to sell corn except for domestically. Um, it's, there's no workers to pick the crops that can't be picked mechanically. So everything is just gotten more expensive to do for farmers with less profits. So do farmers, I just feel like Nebraska is going to be the real key here on this one, whether the independent that's going to run against the Republican for Senate in 26 can flip that state. I wouldn't have thought that was really possible, even 6 months ago, but it's the energy's really changing here. Farmers getting mad at Republicans. I think a lot of them already are, but going through and actually voting for a Democrat is a different story, or an independent. Yeah, I think they see the greed of it all, right? They just, the Nine of Cups, the greedy merchant, and they see the world being okay, but the US not. So it doesn't make any sense. Um, you know, they're literally waiting for their harvest to come in and trying to decide whether to harvest it or just to till it under to the ground because in some cases it might be more expensive to harvest it than it is to just till it under. 'Cause it's not much money to be made. And I think we'll see a lot of grain rotting on the ground this winter. That's just the way it's going to be. Um, yeah, they're going to walk away from MAGA and the Republicans. They've already started. They got the message. The message is you don't care about us. It's really quite simple. That's the message. Uh, Wish they'd got it before, uh, but I think they're getting it now. I think they think the Republicans are just out of their minds. Like, free trade is always the easiest way to control worldwide commodity prices, right? Free trade. Uh, Otherwise, you have markets that are cheaper than others, and then things get a little bit crazy. So, and when you have your main buyer of soybeans choosing to buy them from Brazil instead of the US, I mean, what's a soybean worth if you can't sell it? Right? It's just like a house. A house is only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. If there are no buyers, it's not worth anything. The Ace of Cups, yeah, this is a surprising twist of events. Here's the Five of Pentacles I've seen in the water. It's just loss. It's a lot of loss. And the Fool, uh, you know, really starting things over. So they see this as greedy. They got the message that they don't care about farmers, and they're ready to reevaluate and start anew. So I think the Democrats have a big opportunity here. This is a new beginning. They've gotten the message, and they literally don't know what to do with their crops, planning for next year in particular. They see the world's not suffering in the same ways. They're willing to turn their backs on the felon because they're experiencing their financial hardships and they blame it on delusional thinking. So I think it's quite fitting, actually. Uh, I think they're kind of shocked that this is what happened, but um, this is what happens when you play around with trade, messages about money and then juggling money and overseas transactions. That's essentially what the felon ruined. So, okay, so Republicans losing support for supporting Charlie Kirk. Now, you would not know this if you just watch the news. Um, they make it seem like this is um, an individual that everybody's embracing, and that's not the case. Now, I don't think anybody in there was really wanting him to be assassinated. I certainly don't see that, but just because he's been assassinated doesn't mean that we should be glorifying him. The flag's at half staff, a national day of recognition. This is equivalent to giving Rush Limbaugh the Congressional Medal of Freedom. It's insulting to most people. So does the support of Charlie Kirk in this way actually turn voters against Republicans? I think in particular women voters and women like ages 35 to 55 that know this movement that maybe would have voted for a Republican, particularly women in married households, white women in particular in married households tend to vote for Republicans. If they have a college degree, then not so much. But uh, I just see this being a turning point in that demographic. Here's the felon in his own reading. So the King of Pentacles. In families, I think people realize that people like Charlie Kirk and the other people that propagate these kind of concepts, they're not really pro-family. That's just absurd. Um, you know, they're pro-family as long as your kids fit a certain mold, and they're pro-family if you're of a certain religion and a certain race. Other than that, they're just not. Um, I think the four swords. We'll have to wait to see what that means. I think that's just referring to him passing. I think we'll be fighting over this for a long time, but eventually I think these viewpoints do vanish. I think we get stability at the center with the Queen of Pentacles and the truth and full illumination with the Sun card and the environment around. And the spy in the camp, um, ironically, this makes a lot of sense. They made this blind choice on a quick whim. They tried to take advantage of something quickly and they really didn't think it through. And people are ready to move on. So they see the felon as threatening security and they're ready to move on from him. Glorifying people like Charlie Kirk is not the way to bring stability. The spy in the camp, the assassin in this case, ironically brought stability through his actions that led to the death. So, we have families that realize that their family might not be the family that the Charlie Kirks of the world were talking about. It's becoming more clear. There'll be lots of arguments about this still in the future, but Republicans made a blind choice and, you know, lights being shed on it now. And I think people have learned who Charlie Kirk is more that didn't know him. And I don't think that bodes well for what they're doing. So it's a surprising new beginning. Lots of toxic masculinity with the Ace of Cups and then the Devil card. Toxic masculinity, mis and disinformation, glorifying something that wasn't ever there, and the abuse of power of the emperor, lowering the flags to half staff for Charlie Kirk. I mean, half staff for Robert Redford would have made more sense to me. I mean, he wanted them raised for when Jimmy Carter died. Right? He didn't want them half staff for that. People remember weird things. Um, so I really do think this drives voters away from Republicans as well. Okay, the fellow keeps looking crazier and crazier in public, saying crazy things. Uh, it almost looks like the hunch in his shoulders is protruding so much forward now that his chin is almost touching his chest. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this. Like the position of his neck is way more forward than it's been. Something I picked up on when I was just briefly watching things, so you guys don't have to. Um, just crazy stuff. Do we need to know about that? Do we need to know about all this crazy stuff? Yeah, it's getting more and more clear that his cognitive function is declining rapidly. And it's getting more and more clear that Republicans just don't seem to care. People are ready to celebrate. People are celebrating his downfall. That's kind of sad, but it's true. I mean, let me rephrase that. It's sad that you could be somebody whose downfall is celebrated. I guess that's the sad thing. Um, I think we're all ready for him to be gone. And look at the Two of Cups, new partnerships. It does make me wonder if there's not more medical support going on all of a sudden. The Queen of Swords, consistency. Every time he speaks, I think, more and more people are realizing how ill he is. We get strength at the center of the reading, and we get discernment with the Queen of Wands and the environment around. People are really taking a hard look at this, questioning whether he's strong enough to be in the position that he is. People are also looking at the way he's acting, with the tariffs and foreign trade, this H-1B visa nonsense. These are all things that only a crazy person would say. They're just really, they make no economic sense. And I think people just don't tell him no that are around him anymore. Because I'm pretty sure the labor secretary thinks this H-1B visa is a terrible idea. Pretty sure Rubio thinks it's a terrible idea for international relations. I mean, I can't imagine they'll support it publicly because, they're sycophants, but um, it's a new reality. People view this very differently than they have in the past. Um, and they're worried about their money. So people are just ready for him to be gone. They're seeing him as being weakened and that everything is just transactional. And at the same time, people are worried about their own finances. They see this uh, H-1B visa, this other nonsense involving foreign relations as making the country weaker. And people are ready for calm again. It's like, Biden was boring. Boring was great. Let's go back to boring. That's, I think, what people are thinking. I do wonder if there's not some new medicines or a new doctor in the mix. I'll look at that later. People are passing their judgment on him and his health because they're using their discernment. And what they've concluded is that they're just ready for a new beginning. It's become clear that he is not going to do the country any good. Now there is the hardcore, 35, 40% that love him, that are part of the cult that will never not love him. But the rest of us very worried about his health, not in the sense whether he passes or doesn't, but worried about his health in the sense that he is allowed to do something really bad, unhealthy, and particularly about the economy and foreign relations. And we get the Hierophant. So again, I really do think the end is near here. So yeah. All right. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with another video soon.